my theory of how Mica died. Well, I know she was pushed to the brink. I know that there's no reason for her to be out there in that area. We've never been there. She's never been there. I mean, my theory is broad right now. There's bruises on her hand. There's injuries to her other arm, like a handprint. And these things were not documented, and they did not show up for no reason. And we were not satisfied with the answers that we were given in the entirety. It didn't seem like enough was done. And we just want more answers. We want more checking into this.
Gonna get in.
Mica, stop. Calm down, Mica, stop. Stop. I don't have your purse. Stop.
You don't have my purse?
Nope. Stop, Mica. Please stop, Mica. Stop.
Give me
Stop. I don't have your purse.
So Mica Miller's dad has talked about bruises on her hand and injuries to her other arm like a handprint. Let's talk about all this today. So much is still going on in the case of Mica Miller, a woman who's 30, who police say took her own life recently. Now, her family still has doubts. A lot of people online still have doubts, and there's still this big controversy with her estranged husband, a man who I hesitate to call Pastor John Paul Miller. Now, in 9 or 10 more days from now, John Paul Miller will turn 45 years of age, either on May 20th or the 21st. I'm trying to narrow it down. I know he was born in May 1979, and I've gone way deep, diving into the church photos and videos, and I see celebrations for him around May 20th or the 21st. So he'll be 45, and I was thinking, there's no fool like an old fool. Now, I'm not calling us old, but you know the saying. God gives us a certain amount of time to get ourselves in order, almost like he gives us grace through our teens and 20s. By the time we hit our 40s and 50s, we don't need to be sinning and causing all this harm as much. But what will his birthday present be? Will it be a lawsuit? A civil lawsuit? Or criminal charges? Anything? Maybe the police won't get sued, according to an attorney, Regina Ward, who showed up on Ashley Banfield this week with Sierra Francis, who is the sister of Mica Miller.
Mica Miller died 12 days ago in a park in North Carolina, exactly where she told 911 she planned to take her own life. But until that call was released, alongside other evidence this week, many believe that Mica's husband may have been involved. And even now, one of Mica's closest friends said in a statement, "You don't have to physically pull a trigger to be responsible for someone's death." Mica Miller's family has just released a statement to us as well about this case, with their continued doubts that this was even a suicide. And here's how it begins. We asked the investigating officer whether her remains were tested for water in her lungs, gunpowder residue on her hands, or any other part of her body, a toxicology report, and an autopsy. However, we were told none of these tests was performed. Their statement goes on to say, Mica's body was released to John Paul on April 30th, 2024. John Paul said that Mica's mother, father, or any other family member was not allowed to see Mica's body at the funeral home. He later changed his mind and said we could see her if our parents first signed the certification of cremation. I am joined now by Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, and her attorney, Regina Ward. Sierra, first and foremost, I am so incredibly sorry that you and your family are going through this terrible tragedy, and our hearts go out to you and your family in your unspeakable loss. I do want to ask you about the statement today, because it shows in the parts that we read that you are firmly in the camp that this clearly wasn't a suicide. Is there some other information that you feel is relevant in that claim? And are the authorities doing anything about your claims?
Based off of the discussion we had with them, I'm seeing that the PowerPoint that we received has been released. And just seeing everything that's being put out, all of the research, everybody that's seeing it is doing, there are a lot of unanswered, questions, especially with, like we stated, all the North Carolina laws not requiring toxicologies, autopsies, and things of that nature. And then combined with John Paul stating that our parents had to sign the cremation order before we were allowed to see her, it just raises a lot of red flags for us.
I do want to ask you, because so many people were very convinced there was something very suspicious about her death. And then when the sheriff released the video of her walking into the gun store, purchasing the gun by herself, and then the drive showed that she went to the park and made the call to 911. Is there anything about that is still unconvincing, that she alone is responsible for her death?
Many times she had mentioned that she thought she needed a firearm for her own protection. She did have firearms she believed were registered to her that were in the possession of her estranged spouse. So she didn't have access to them. And as all the police reports have stated, she was afraid for her safety. So it doesn't really surprise me if she were to purchase a firearm, because she had mentioned that she might need it for her own safety.
And then, is there another theory that you have in terms of what might have happened after the purchase of that gun? Like, what does your family believe actually happened?
We're still hoping that somebody can shed some light on that. Obviously, we've seen the report that police did. We're just still not convinced that she would have not prepared us for this situation. She was a very humble person, a very giving person, and she would have not just, oh, I'm not going to go to work today, I'm not going to call out, and just leave them hanging. She would have made sure that somebody was covering her shift. She would have made sure that somebody knew what was going to happen. She wouldn't have just not told anyone.
Sierra, I'd like to ask you about some of Mica's friends. They said that they saw lots of signs of a toxic relationship, as has her family. And of course, the friend today texted, "You don't have to pull the trigger to be responsible for someone's death," end quote. Is there some legal action that you believe could result from all of this? Maybe even a wrongful death suit that could be filed against perhaps John Paul Miller? I'm wondering about any kind of action taken against the police, who didn't seem to follow up on many of her reports of criminal activity, and also of just fear for her safety.
I would let Ms. Ward speak to that, since it's legal.
So that's what I'd love to know. Regina, can you answer those questions?
Well, there are some questions about that. In fact, we were going to try to start seeking a civil action attorney to consult with, to see if some of the documents that we have found, or not found, but that Mica left in my care, as well as her family also had found, there seems to me that there could be a civil action.
But perhaps John Paul and his church could get sued, because there's a lot of questions over Mica's treatment and even how much she was paid. Just all of this control over Mica. Was Mica underpaid by the church? We've got so much to catch up on that I just want to dump in this big video. Was she paid by the church at all? I know she did a lot, and keeping up with her husband's appetites took a lot of time too, apparently. But in terms of the civil lawsuit, that is the talk from attorney Regina Ward, as she told Ashley Banfield on News Nation this week. And there's also talk of this letter that Mica wrote 9 days before she died, some extensive letter. Now, I haven't seen a copy of the letter yet, but it has been read in part on News Nation, and it details this long campaign of alleged harassment, which Mica says that JP performed against her, launched against her, plotting evil, putting trackers not only on her vehicle, on her godmother's vehicle, and much more abuse. When I hear about that, putting trackers on not only Mica's vehicle, also her godmother's vehicle, that kind of makes one of his excuses fly out the window. JP claimed, "Of course I was putting a tracker on her vehicle because, I wanted to see if Mica was going to go to a gun store," and as if he was doing it preemptively. as if he was so concerned about his wife and her mental state that he wanted to put a tracker on her car to know if she was going to a gun store. Well, then what's the excuse for putting trackers allegedly on her godmother's vehicle? And there's even proof where JP admitted to hiring a PI to put these trackers on her car.
About that in a minute, but did the police follow up with the allegation that she made? And I understand that we've learned that she joined the youth program at his church at age 14, made this claim about being age 10, to the police. So I'm still trying to figure out the discrepancy there. But about that, did the police follow up when she made a claim that she had been abused as a child by this man?
From my reading of these police documents, no. They basically lumped that together with the car theft and says because this couple is married, the car was considered marital property, and there wasn't a theft there. There was no follow-up mentioned in the police report about the grooming claim. No.
That's uncomfortable. I have to be honest. If a police officer hears from someone who says, the man I'm married to, we've covered stories like this before. Mary Kay Letourneau went to prison for molesting the boy she met as a teacher and eventually married and had 2 children with. So it's not out of the ordinary that we would be skeptical and need to ask those questions. Go back to the committal, being in the hospital for I think it was 2 or 3 days, something like that. Who made that happen? Who involuntarily had her committed?
Well, it depends on which side you're asking. Her side, she was saying she was involuntarily committed. This is something I've heard from her friends as well, saying like she was tricked into meeting and then they whisked her into this hospital. It's hard to say without a factual accounting of what exactly happened. But in a message to me, he had said that she had been going to this hospital for years, up to 7 years.
So she was there from February 8th to February 10th. So it was a very brief, almost like the 5150 we hear about in California. It's about usually a 48-hour committal, that sort of thing. And the issue of the car theft seemed to be the only thing that the police, took from that. Let's talk about another issue that came out today that, again, you have to look at in so many different ways. It's a criminal report that was filed about theft from the church that they belong to. And it alleged that Mica herself had stolen donations. What's the rounder, fuller picture with context in that?
Well, again, it's hard to understand, but my reading of everything is that a call came from the church to the police asking to investigate theft. I believe it was $1,200 from the church into an account. But the context that's needed here, I believe, is that, and from what I'm told, he is ultimately the owner of this church. And if they're married and they've taken trips together for this trip, missions over to Kenya, it's all intertwined. So it's really hard to get to the bottom of this. My sense is that this is my opinion, this is what happened after the breakdown in their relationship, because just strictly looking at the police reports, the number of them in the past 3 months, ticked up. The police reports I have went back to 2019, but in the past month, there were about 8 different calls to police, which tells me she was reaching out to the police a lot in the past 2 months before that led up to her death.
There were multiple reports of that she had that she'd reached out to the police. Rich McHugh, I'm going to give you a break for a moment because I'm going to head over to Allison Weiner, who is also one of our News Nation producers who's been working on this story as well. Allison has more exclusive reporting. Okay, so Allison, let me jump in with you now. There's a lot to sort of sort through in real time, so forgive me if I sort of refer to the documents. But you have new information apart from the video that Rich just showed us that clearly indicates who the redacted name is on the reports that Mica was filing, saying she had a stalker. She'd been constantly stalked. He'd actually been chasing her. Police witnessed him showing up at a moment they were with her. Tell me what you found out.
Well, thanks for having me, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be on with you. I actually have reports from sources close to the family that it was J.P. Miller who was the person who was the redacted name in the police reports.
So that's now come from what we saw on the video that appeared to be John Paul Miller, and now family confirming that he is the stalker that she was referring to in the police reports that the police, blacked out and wouldn't let us see. The other question is whether they were actually separated or not. A lot of people have been confused about whether they were divorcing, whether there was even a divorce proceeding. What do we know about the status of their marriage when she died?
Well, I think that they were clearly separated. I think she had filed for divorce. I think prior to that, there had been attempts to get a restraining order, which was denied. But my sources close to the family said that before she was able to go in to see the judge with her restraining order, there was a meeting between her and John Paul Miller, and that when they went in, the restraining order was denied by the judge, but the judge said to redraft it, and she never got around to doing that. She was on her way to redrafting it. I think this is a really interesting case and an important case, especially for women. I think that's why it's touching such a nerve for everyone, because basically we have a woman who is claiming and alleging that she was stalked, that she was harassed, and it ends with her killing herself. And there are so many different kinds of police involvement. Nobody stops this ball from rolling towards her. She tries to get a restraining order. It doesn't work out. She files for divorce. She pulls her filing for divorce. It's just really kind of back and forth. But it seems from everything that I am hearing from my sources that she was trying to end this marriage and having a lot of trouble, not to mention the allegations that there was a tracker on it, and there was a tracker on her car, and also that he was following her and harassing her with phone calls. Allegations.
And then, Allison, you have exclusive reporting, something I had no idea was part of this story, and that is that Mica had been married before?
Yes, I actually heard this from another source very close to the family who has confirmed that she was, this is a terrible twist, she was married, and when she got married, John Paul was the pastor. They started an affair which ended that marriage, and then she subsequently married John Paul. And John Paul's history with marriages, apparently he also had a first wife, Allison Miller, and according to my sources, Allison has reached out to the family. I was told she actually got out just in time because the way he was treating her was similar to the way he was treating Mica. And the family
this is what she said. She felt she got out just in time.
I think you can ask her about that.
This is her claim.
Sorry.
Apologies. We have a huge delay between us, so I apologize for the overspeak. But when you said that she reached out to the family, the former wife of John Paul Miller, this is hard to, so he's married to someone else. He begins an affair with Mica. He divorces that other wife who has children with him and eventually marries Mica, even though she was in the youth program at the church. So I think the age that she started the youth program is 14 in his church. And this woman said that she felt she got out just in time. These were her words, that she said, I got out just in time.
Yes.
Well, that's uncomfortable, to say the very least. I do want to ask you, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it was one thing. What I was saying is that when she got married the first time, Mica, that her husband was close friends with John Paul, and he married them. And then John Paul moved in and had an affair with Mica prior to them marrying.
So even another ugly twist. She's married to his friend. He's the actual minister in the ceremony and then ultimately ends up marrying her. He also has a criminal history. What did you find out about his criminal history?
Well, he has an assault charge. It's a misdemeanor, but it actually would have carried 4 years of prison time. This is back in 1997 when the assault happened. But it's, he could have gotten 4 years of prison time. He allegedly, at least based on the records, he got 3 years probation instead. But clearly, way back to when he was in his early 20s or late teen years, the guy was having issues.
Do we know where he is right now? The the story that has been just sort of ballooning is really screaming out for him to make some comments. Do we know where he is? Is he in hiding? Is anybody asking him any questions? Are the police asking him any questions, given all the allegations that are being made by family and friends?
I don't know what role the police are playing at this time. I do know that there's some video that was handed over to the authorities who were investigating, doing the death investigation. And in the video, Mica was trying to capture what was going on in the relationship, and she videoed him, John Paul, quite a bit. And in this video, John Paul is heard talking to her and talking about her while he speaks to her in the past tense, like she's already dead. And one of my sources said that they had seen a clip of that video, but that's now in the hands of law enforcement.
Wow, that's so sad. Just all of it is just so complex and so very sad. Allison Weiner, thank you for this reporting. I know that was a lot of work. Both you and Rich McHugh did a great job in not only getting the documents, finding family members, and digging up all of these parts of the past, which I think might have been quieted had the family not come forward. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We still have so many. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just one more thing. I think that everybody needs to pay attention to the fact that this woman was asking for help in so many different ways. Now, I don't know how true all of the allegations are, but it's something that should strike a nerve with everyone, that when we hear someone asking for help, that we should try to listen and see if there is something that we can do, because clearly the police failed her on numerous occasions in terms of looking into the investigation, investigating her allegations. So whatever J. Paul Miller's lawyer wants to say, we still have a list and a number of reports that were not investigated.
Yeah, amen to that. There are official reports, documented reports of how many times she was reaching out for help to the police and to others. Again, Allison Weiner, great reporting today. Thank you for that. As Allison points out, there are still so many questions. And what's so sad is that Mica can't answer those questions. But she did share many of her secrets with her family before she died. And tonight, they are here to talk to us. Mica's sister and her attorney join me for an exclusive interview next.
There's so much coming out on different sides. We see so many videos where Mica and JP apparently took of one another, both needing proof of what is happening here. And in one, we can see JP is caught on video admitting to, threatening her, I'm gonna put this on Facebook. And I love the way she fights back and says, okay, you'll be in jail too. Because he says something like, oh, this is going on Facebook in an hour or whatever. And she's like, you'll be in jail in an hour. How dare he threaten her.
Walk away.
I'll show you the pictures.
Do you want to go to jail?
They'll be on Facebook in a few hours.
Alrighty, you'll be in jail in a few hours. Walk away.
There were admissions, apologies of him posting some topless photo of Mica. Like, who would do this to their very own wife and purport to be any kind of pastor or Christian, putting it on Facebook out there for the world to see? And he tagged allegedly her old profile, so she didn't even have access to remove it. Even though JP is going to claim, oh, it was only up there for an hour. It only takes 1 second for people to get screenshots and spread it everywhere. But I love the fact that Mica Miller's dad, Michael Francis, says to Ashley Banfield, absolutely, they're pushing for criminal charges, wrongful death, civil charges against John Paul Miller. Her dad is even pushing for new laws that would help, because certain laws that are in place, especially those North Carolina laws not requiring autopsy, oh my goodness, may be pretty antiquated, but they need help and support. What's really sad is Mica's dad telling Ashley Banfield how right after JP and Mica got married, she was only, 23? That's when things really started to go downhill. That's when John Paul forced Mica to have a certain unnamed surgery, and she reacted so violently to the anesthesia, it just really made her sick. According to Mica's dad, JP took advantage of that. Now, it's nice. He didn't want to name the surgery. A lot of people were commenting it was probably breast augmentation. knowing him it was. I mean, that's just horrible. All these things to force your wife to do. Like, it's one thing if a woman decides on her own, I'd like to get this cosmetic procedure because I want to feel better about myself or whatever. That's one thing. But to have something forced upon you, like, you better do this. We're going to talk about how she was allegedly tricked into being involuntarily committed in that Waccamaw Medical Center or whatever. Mica's dad says JP has caused terrible pain. Her sister described it as because both of her sisters have spoken to Ashley Banfield, Sierra Francis, and Destiny. And Destiny called it Mica's own private hell that they're just now discovering. Of course, they knew a lot of it, but much more is being unfolded as all these, videos leak and all the evidence and everything. Her sister described it, and her dad, as Mica had the life sucked out of her once she started meeting JP. As soon as JP came into her life, like Mica accused, and it's in police reports for anyone wanting to launch any lawsuits against YouTubers or TikTokers, we are quoting police reports, official public documents. Mica was the one who accused JP of grooming her, and I believe her. I believe her. I'm not saying believe all people all the time. You look at the evidence as it's presented and you can see the ramp up of all these police 911 phone calls. Hopefully I will have them soon to either put in this video or the next video so we can get even more context and not just paper that doesn't always make sense. It's just the interpretation of the officer. But JP put a stop to whatever projects Mica got interested in. It was like her brightness threatened him or something. Like he felt like he had to dim her light for some reason. I hope we get to see this letter and this evidence that was able to be saved or recovered. Mica's sister Destiny told News Nation yesterday, and I've linked to everything, all my sources below. They're wide and varied, so I just like to gather everything. Mica's sister Destiny told News Nation yesterday that Mica has evidence on her phone and laptop that was there prior to Mica being committed. So is this why he had her committed? Committed against her will, Mica says. But John Paul allegedly deleted that evidence, according to her sister, and held on to Mica's electronics until the date passed when they could recover the evidence. But her family is fighting to get whatever, cell phone, burner phone she had most recently. Maybe there's evidence on there. Obviously, they've recovered some stuff. Wait till we talk about her body. Like, I'm assuming her family has gotten to see her body now, but that was a struggle. But Mica's dad did not know about any inappropriate sexual contact between JP and Mica when she was still a 14-year-old. We know that confusion happened when it was the police report that said Mica said she met JP when she was a 10-year-old, when she was 10, and he started grooming her. Well, her sister cleared it up. Maybe Mica was saying, I met him in 2010. That's why I like to hear the calls. I'm going to get these calls. The Myrtle Beach Police Department has been very, very kind to me, so I hope to bring them to you next, but I want to hear the calls myself so we can hear if Mica says, yeah, I met him in 10, and did the officer think she said, I met him when I was 10. So she cleared it up. She met him around 2010, which is really 2009. Mica's dad and sister, they didn't see any inappropriate sexual contact back then. What they did see at some point when she was a teenager, I don't know when in there, John Paul, according to them, continually texting Mica, that's what her sister said, when she was a teen, and urging her to get away from her family by offering her different households to stay in, like related to the church. I could see how Mica could fall for that and how JP could get away with that. He is kind of charming. Like, if you don't look at all the stuff we know now, if we didn't know any of the stuff, horrific stuff about him that we know now, I can see that charming side of his personality where you think, oh, he's a good guy trying to help. But according to her sister, JP isolated Mica, put her in these homes of other church family members, got her a car and all that, started drawing her away from her family even when she was a teenager. I wonder now if that's why she got married so young, at 18, because the guy she married was actually a friend of John Paul. I don't know really who that guy is. I don't know. I think I've seen his name. I'm not sure. I think I have seen his name and photo. Was it all a setup? So John Paul is married. He's 25. He has kids. He meets Mica when she's 14. He probably allegedly sets his sights on her. According to her family, that's when the grooming starts. So Mica is speaking from the grave, accusing JP of grooming her. Her sister has come out and her dad accusing JP of grooming her. We are not pulling this stuff out of a vacuum. You know, this is all not all this wild rumors and conjecture that JP's lawyer is going to try and spin. We'll read his little press release later. It's her own family who witnessed this, and her sister says, yeah, JP was, hitting her up, texting her all that time and all this stuff. And any vulnerable teenager, the teenage years can be so difficult anyway. But imagine you move to South Carolina, you're there, you're 14, you're 15, your parents are trying to do the right thing. Oh, this new church got all these awards. Well, it's a different church then, I guess. But this great church, let's take her there. She can get in the youth group, she can meet people. I'm sure the goal was to meet people her own age and have a nice, safe environment. Isn't that the irony? A safe environment for your teenager to go to. You're in a new town, meet new people, go to this church. Who would expect the pastor to ever have designs on her or ever mistreat her or ever make her his wife one day? So texting, imagine, Mica, if you're a teenager and you have some older, powerful, if she found him good-looking man, like, oh, wow. And if there's any kind of issues at home as a teenager, which of course there could be, but you might feel special if a guy's like, oh yeah, here, you can have more independence, stay in these other homes, and I'll even get you a car. What teenager wouldn't kind of look at that like, oh my goodness, he likes me and this is great and I get a car and I get to have some independence and all these things. Yeah, it's not right, but it's very sad. That is very isolating. And who knows what JP may have told church members? Who knows if he may have said, this is a young woman who is having a hard time at home. This is what happens where people with good intentions can do this, where people in the church, they might see a teenager in need in a troubled family. I'm not saying Mica was in one, but they can help reach out and they can say maybe that teenager needs a little extra help. They need this or need that. And maybe good-hearted church members were like, oh yeah, we'll take her in. We'll help her. Her family saying it's the first means of isolating her. Mica's husband, John Paul, admitted in a letter that apologized to Mica to posting a topless photo of her online. So if you watch the video from News Nation correspondent Rich McHugh, you will see that. And an apology letter written on April 15th, 2024 from John Paul to Mica admits to damaging her car, but it's like he's almost trying to bribe her. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll buy you like a brand new SUV if you'll just come back. So he said, I'm sorry for putting that horrible picture of you on the internet. I was hurt that you were telling everyone horrible, intimate details about my past sin, and I wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do that. Yeah, people are wondering, okay, when is the evil going to turn into illegal? Out of all the plethora of, oh my goodness, so many police reports I was going through, trying to get the report numbers and the case numbers and try and request all the 911 calls available. Unfortunately, we can't get the body cam from South Carolina. That's a law, I guess. But I wonder how that weird body cam leaked of John Paul. If you haven't seen it, I'll put it here.
JP. You alright, man? You okay? Huh? You okay? What's the matter? Huh? What's the matter?
I switched my medication. Makes me go crazy.
Is somebody helping you?
I think Mark's coming to get me.
Oh, okay.
I thought I was going to see Jesus.
Okay. But you got Mark coming?
Somebody called him, I think.
Okay.
I feel like he invited me. I can't
So-
want to see Jesus. Because he had spiked me everywhere.
Is your medication something they gave you?
Yes, I'm a drug.
Yeah.
You do some new doses or something.
You want me to make sure Mark's coming?
Yeah, all I do is find out whether the phone's on me. I don't know.
But somebody's called him, right?
Yeah, the lady across the street called.
Okay. All right. Hey, JP. I think Mark is coming. I had him try to get in touch with me again to make sure. Is that okay? Huh?
Ants fight me. There's ants all over me.
He was letting there's ants on you? There's no ants on you, though. It's just, maybe that's how you feel, but there's none on you. There's none on the grass. What kind of medicine do they have you on? All right. Well, somebody's going to come. Okay. Do I need to call 911? Do I need to call the medics? Yeah, we got somebody coming.
Is there anything I can do? You need water or something?
You want some water or anything? You want some water? Yeah, he said okay if you got a little bottle of water.
I do.
I don't know. I think they changed his medication or something, he said. And he said like ants was crawling on him and stuff. So I got somebody coming to.
Okay.
Yeah. Right across the street.
Back over here.
Oh, okay.
So, well, let me know if I can do anything.
Okay, I think he's. Okay. Here's some water, JP. You want some water?
I just want to love you so much. You always taking care of me.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
You want to try to sit up? You want to try to sit up, or you want to put it to your mouth, or what?
I'll be out in a few minutes if you need anything else.
Okay. Is that enough? You want more?
I can't stop making noises in the morning when I wake up.
If Mark can't make it quick, you want me to get your mom over here?
I don't want my mom anywhere. They're jerks. They're crazy. I always told everybody to get on medication, and this is what it does. They're crazy. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't do nothing. I feel like I hit some eyes. Get up paz.
Where he was on the ground sobbing. Now, this was allegedly from 2015 to 2016. Anyway, he's on the ground, he's outside of his truck, and that's why it's not his most current truck, people say. That guy, I love this guy, he went off. Ty Longerbeam. He posted the video. He says, I believe the saying goes, getting a taste of your own medicine, and I mean that quite literally. You have used and abused for way too long only to get up on that pulpit and consistently discredit your victims by airing out intentional, degrading, inappropriate personal information. What kind of pastor? But I love this guy for posting this video. Now that we have the death of your own wife that you claim only took her life because of mental illness, fact is nobody was ever mental until they met you. And there's a statement from Mica's family saying, look, we have no evidence of her suffering any mental issues at all, mental health issues, until she married John Paul in 2017.
Mica Miller may have bought the gun, held the gun, and fired the gun that ended her life, but her family is convinced that someone else put that gun in her hands, if not literally, then metaphorically. In a lengthy statement that I read portions of last night, the family says it is important to note that prior to 2017, the year they were married, no one in Mica's family ever witnessed any symptoms of mental illness, and she never had been diagnosed with any mental illness. It goes on to say, based on all of the information that we have found directly from Mica, we feel that John Paul had a lot to do with her depression and self-doubt, and strongly believe that he is responsible for her death, whether he actually pulled the trigger or convinced her to do so.
But Ty went on to say, you are the common denominator in all of this. This video is only proof that you yourself have issues and you know what medication can do to someone. Imagine being in a vulnerable state like this and being met with control, manipulation, and shame. What's the long-term effect on that? Now add abuse on top of all of that, all forms that may apply. Who can handle that? Yet you were met with a soft tone and a water bottle that you didn't deserve. It's offered JP here, there's putting water up to his mouth and he's like, glug, glug, glug. He's like, there's ants crawling on me, and the officer's like, I don't see any ants on you. But Ty said, JP, I could have done this anonymously, but I want you to see it's coming from me. So you don't go after anyone else. You know I've got receipts, and you know I'm not scared. I've never met anyone like you, but what I have learned and been taught is people like you repeat their behavior, and every so often they slip up and show who they really are. Sometimes they even type it in an email. I think it's abundantly clear that you haven't been held accountable for any of your actions over the years, and I never hit the recycling bin. Solid Rock, let me introduce you to your pastor. You don't see this version on Sundays. This is the guy you allow to give you and your family counsel. This is the guy you give permission to speak into your life. This is the guy you share personal, vulnerable information with that he will use against you when and if you question him. It's time to really take a step back and evaluate what's going on. JP, you are a complete ish stain to all the other pastors that truly desire to lead people to the Lord. You are a liability to the Christian faith and to anyone that you set your eyes on. The reason why most people didn't speak up the first time is because they know your reaction is ruthless. You have a little bit of local power with enough financial resources to hurt people legally, and they fear putting their family at risk. And the few others that don't speak up believe it's not the Christian thing to do. Well, neither is doing nothing. Whew. I also believe Jesus flipped over some tables, so here we go. Amen. Ty said you've already had the chance the first time around for a time of healing, counsel, and guidance pursuant to our governing instrument. Second time your reverend had to give that same PR speech to a church body. I wonder what the first time he's talking about, when the adultery between JP and Mica broke up their first church and they had to start this new Solid Rock. Yet you chose to smack every former member in the face that would have supported you. if you got the help you need. So please don't mistake this video as a broken man who misses his family. This is a twisted individual using one of his many tactics to manipulate his way back into control. But his target didn't let that happen. She kept her foot down and you changed gears and got nasty. Over the years, his ways to manipulate have only gotten more effective with precision. To the ones who are the reason I'm involved, I won't name. I hope you understand why I had to do this. Enough is enough. Some want to raise awareness and most want justice. Godspeed, JP. If you know, you know. Internet, do your thing. And he tagged Kyler Marlowe, been speaking out a lot on Mica's behalf. He hashtagged Mica Miller, justice for Mica. And that's really gone viral. So it's gotten 153,000 views. And I'm grateful. People aren't afraid to speak out. So Mica's dad also told News Nation last night that he spoke with Mica the day before her death. And she was feeling some slight depression and she didn't know why that was returning, because she had felt so much better after getting away from John Paul. But her dad said maybe it arose, that depression, because all the pressure of the stalking and having her tires slashed and all the things she had to deal with. And it is sad to me that she wasn't allowed to just leave him and get away from him and divorce him amicably, let the courts decide who gets what, determine, okay, how much did she work in this church and what does she deserve for all these years she put in, like slave labor. And now that they have admissions from him of posting certain things on Facebook, where can criminal charges come in? And there's stuff we haven't even seen. Some people on either side are putting out stuff like, oh, see, it's JP that was the real victim, or maybe not. And there's a voicemail of Mica put out there. Find all my sources below. A voicemail was from February where Mica was saying something like, I should have never left you. Interestingly, I think this happened after, I can't check the date on my phone. I think this happened after her being institutionalized against her wishes. So in my opinion, she might have been trying to sweet talk him. Believe me, I've done it to get out of an abusive situation where some personalities you have to just calmly, step away and try not to trigger them. But she might have been saying, oh yeah, I should have never left you, like she's saying. They're trying to make her sound crazy. And I don't like when evidence is used against a person to make them look crazy. Let's just see whatever evidence stands for itself.
Hey, honey. Hope I'm talking to my husband. I never should have left you. I never should have abandoned you when you were trying to work things out. I never should have put anybody else before you. I love you. At this point, I don't even know who my husband is because I don't have a paper trail. I don't have a copy of my marriage license and where it was filed and proof that I am married to who the world thinks I'm married to, who I think I'm married to. I don't even know anymore. I'm getting tax records from Mica Miller. I don't even know what my last name is. I know I'm Mica Acacia. I know I'm that. My parents gave me those two names. That's on my original birth certificate. Still is today. But I don't know who I belong to under God and legally anymore because I don't have a paper trail. And that's important because if you get put on life support, if you are mentally unable or unfit to run the church, I need to know the paper trail. Who's in charge? We got a lot of assets, a lot of money to guard because it's not our money, it's God's money. And whose money was that? Before God, He put it in the pockets of people. And then those people gave it to us and entrusted us with God's money in God's house to do as God wishes. But I don't know who's steering the boat anymore, and that concerns me. I'd like a paper trail. I don't feel like that's too much to ask from the First Lady, or maybe the First Lady of Solid Rock, in case something happens to you. I love you. This isn't to harm you. I love you. Bye.
She's saying stuff like, I don't even know who I am. She's like, I know my name is Mica Acacia. To me, she's saying it more poetically. Like, I don't even know if I'm still a Miller. Am I still really your wife? And these forms I'm getting, and it has my maiden name on some. It seems like there was a lot of manipulation going on. She didn't know what was what. Like, she even called herself the First Lady. She said, and that's a thing. I think it's more common in black churches. You know, people weren't used to a pastor's wife being called a First Lady. First time I heard it years ago, I was like, what? You know, but yeah, a lot of black churches too. Non-denominational. They're not all cults. Some are just no denomination. They're like, we're not Protestant. We're not Catholic. We're not Baptist. We're just Christian. So that's a thing. You know, it's not all non-denominational churches are cults. Like I saw some comment. You just want a pastor who is installed there by God, who is a good person, who is truly living out the word behind closed doors to the best of his ability, not some perfect superhuman, but you see what I'm saying. But this voicemail, she's saying, am I still even the First Lady? And I took that as, wow, you know, she knows. I'm sure he allegedly has been seeing this woman who I see photos of Mica. People tag me on Twitter, thank you. Photos of Mica with his alleged paramour, her husband's paramour. They're right there together, and she's like having to smile and put up with his stuff. So she's kind of like, am I still the First Lady? Almost like, look, do you have another First Lady? The timing of this voicemail is interesting because I think Mica is just trying to apologize just to get back in John Paul's good graces. Perhaps. Maybe she had regrets about leaving, I don't know. It's a hard road to hoe when you're trying to get out of a relationship, especially one she knew this man for at least 15 years. That's a long time. If there was spiritual abuse involved, if a person's in your head, if you thought of them one way, like a savior almost. Ooh, you know, the way she raised her arms when in that photo when he proposed to her, she probably felt all her dreams were coming true. I got this great guy and I can be the First Lady at church and I can be his wife and we can go start a new church or whatever and go live our lives. She's probably in the voicemail trying to sweet talk him just to be able to get her electronics back to get the proof she needs to turn it in as evidence. So her dad said, yeah, Mica had to look over her shoulder all the time. It was a situation that was not normal, and she did feel like she needed to purchase a gun for her own protection. So, whoa, yeah, some people are thinking, yeah, she just was at that gun store for her own protection. And was she being followed by anyone? I don't know. The cops have cleared John Paul. I made that clear in my previous video and even in my first video. You can play it back because I'm planning on leaving him up unless God tells me to pull him down. Even in my first video about this, I said, the way he announced it to his church is sketchy, and if anything, he's guilty of being an icky husband. And no way am I saying he did anything directly to, you know, take his wife's life. You know, oh my goodness, with the bruises on her hands and the bruises on her arm, I don't know where it is, that her dad talked about. Conspiracy theories will probably run wild in the wake of her death. And I'm not a big conspiracy theory person. I'm just an evidence person. I like to see the evidence, I like to see the proof. And that's what Mica's family and friends want more of. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of proof. Now I know after death, they can tell with the lividity and all that which injuries may have come after death. I still don't know where Mica was. I know she was at the Lumber River State Park, but was she like on the edge of the water and she took her life, and then did she fall into the water and then whoever extracted her from the water, you know, did they pull her out and cause bruises? I don't know. But it would be great if they could perform more things. Like they don't know if there was water in her lungs or not. They don't know if there was gunshot residue on her hands. And I know when you get deep into the science of it, some people end up saying, well, that's a old school type of thing anyway, because if there was gunshot residue on her hands, some people will say, yes, closed case. she fired the gun herself, but some people will still say, well, someone else might have, forced her hand around the trigger. But it would be nice to have more information. I'm glad that Mica's friends and family are standing firm, even as John Paul's lawyer is threatening lawsuits aplenty. Even though this so-called harassment from John Paul towards Mica knew no bounds, according to her family and friends, the saving grace is that Mica was able to document so much of his ill treatment against her. And we hear her voice like a voice crying out, from heaven. The pastor's attorney is threatening civil legal actions and even issued this cease and desist letter against anyone who allows slanderous or libelous words to remain in the public domain. So Fitz News has been on top of it. I've linked to them below. They did a great article. They are not letting it go either. They've done another more recent video and they're going to do even more. We're going to learn about from Mica's friends what they say she, out of her own mouth, told them about her husband's sex addiction, wanting it 3 to 5 times per day, and what John Paul allegedly did if he didn't get it from her that much, like allegedly throwing water on her and blasting loud music as she was trying to fall asleep. A pastor's wife already has enough stuff to do. Believe me, I know pastors' wives. There's enough to do with it, and especially a church the size of Solid Rock, there's a lot to do. Behind the scenes, people don't even realize it's not just a Sunday job. I mean, it's like a Monday through Sunday job. So he's blasting, allegedly, according to her friends, loud music and throwing water on her, these interrogation techniques, these torture techniques against her, against the wife that God commanded him to love, and allegedly forcing her to take testosterone injections. So now I know what Mica meant in that one video when she said someone forcing you to take illegal drugs. So at first I thought, oh, if it's, prescribed medication, that's one thing. But it sounds like if she was being forced to take testosterone injections, that's not good. So it was the police report. Case number, I like to get this online and on video as proof. Case number 24002930 from the Myrtle Beach Police Department that stated, quote, the CP stated that she has known her husband since she was 10 years old and that he groomed her while she worked for him at Solid Rock Church. So that's where the media gets it from. People aren't making up stories. That's where that claim came from. However, we've had the confusion cleared up. Maybe they misheard her. She might have meant I met him in 2010, not when I was 10. But definitely in her obituary, which John Paul wrote, apparently, they met in 2009 when she was only 14 or 15 years old. Like Regina Ward is quoting from Mica's letter, Mica was brainwashed by this man and he abused her in every possible way there is. So they list off financially, and it just sounds like emotionally in so many different ways. So Attorney Ward did say that she has plenty of Mica's journals and even one video of John Paul allegedly referring to Mica in the past tense while she was still alive. Boy, maybe that video will leak. At least the cops have it. At least the lawyer has it, thankfully. That would be so weird if your husband's like, you were the best wife when you were alive? Or what exactly did he say to her? Trying to put thoughts in her head? And to me, this morning I felt really I get these feelings. I felt like the Lord may have been saying she just didn't even want to die. Even though it was at her own hand, I believe physically, I don't necessarily believe far-fetched theories where it's like, oh, someone must have created her AI voice in that 911 call. No, I've duplicated my own voice in AI for videos in the past, and it doesn't work that way where you're on a 911 call and the operator saying, what's the nature of your emergency? And you can immediately go through an AI. You can have it duplicate your voice. You can type to text and spit out what you want. But it sounded like Mica to me, and it sounded like she really did want to call and give her family a heads up. She didn't want her to be like a missing person and have them, I'm sure, looking for her for days and days if they didn't find her right away. But the AI doesn't work that way where you can just pull out oh, she just asked me that. Let me type this up and okay, and here's the answer. Let me type this up and here's the answer. the delay would have been a lot more than a 2.5-minute call. And I believe she hung up. But thankfully, John Paul's ex-wife, his first wife, Allison Williams, John Paul was 25 and married to Allison Williams, the father of multiple children, when he met Mica. But now Allison Williams has reportedly contacted Mica's family and is working with them. According to News Nation, Allison got out of that marriage just in time. I mean, it probably felt like hell to her then, like, oh my goodness, my husband's having an affair with this younger girl. Well, when Mica was 18, she married some other dude and then they got divorced. Allison may have felt like, oh no, this is horrible during that time, but now she's like, she literally dodged a bullet because John Paul, according to News Nation, was starting to do the same things to Allison that he ended up doing to Mica, and we don't know the details of all that. John Paul's first child was born out of wedlock, and the remaining 4 children were born to him and his first wife, Allison. I'm so grateful she's working with Mica's family. So, speaking of church and church going on, and maybe that church getting sued, which they should, I do feel bad for the members of that church because people seem to assume that every church member knows everything that's going on behind the scenes. I know history from personal experience, that's just not true. Especially if it's a church on the larger side. I don't know their attendance, but it looked like a good attendance, and they were enough to have 2 services until, instead of their normal 2 services, they recently announced, so tomorrow they're just going to have 1 church service every Sunday at 10 a.m. It'll start tomorrow, this Sunday, May 12th. Mother's Day, as it were, having 1 church service at 10 a.m. They already know their attendance is going to drop. And of course, it probably needs to drop down to 0. But I still do feel sorry for some of the church members because it looked like a lovely church. And people are like, how could anybody sit under that man? And yeah, there were some weird sermons. And I don't know if they got weirder towards the end as he was going through that divorce. But yeah, there was weirdness. But a lot of the church, I'm sure the members were there, and I was like a community, and you know, looking through their photos and the baby showers and the celebrations and the families together, and it's sad. I hope they can all find a better church home where they can all go, but you've got to feel like your family's breaking up, or for people who haven't been through it, maybe you don't understand, but it doesn't mean that every church member was culpable. Those are some comments I've seen around online, as if every single person knew what the heck John Paul was doing. And there was even a police report where News Nation says that someone was accusing Mica of stealing money from the church. And I want to hear that call too. I hope I get it. First of all, it doesn't mean that Mica did anything, but I'm thinking, did this happen when she had no resources? Someone took like money from Zelle and some other account, only about $1,200, but it was designated to go to like Kenya or Africa Project. And so there's a lot of questions about it. You know, if it's still marital property mixed in with church property under both of their names, how could one person just accuse Mica of taking it? But yeah, there's an article written May 8th for Fitz News by Jen Wood where she gets into a lot of details of their marriage. So we know Mica has been officially confirmed. She died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. And the Robeson County, North Carolina the sheriff's office has cleared John Paul as a suspect. But Fitz News still spoke with Mica's friends, several of her close friends, about, you know, what she was going through in those days and weeks and months prior to her death. So Allison and John Paul Miller finalized their divorce on October 29th, 2015, and then John Paul married Mica when she was 23 years old in 2017. And that's when she took on more active duties as a first wife. You see her in so many photos and so many activities. She was more active in day-to-day activities in the church. We know she was creative directing. We know she was on the praise and worship team. And the stuff you see when it's finally on stage is just a part of it. You don't see all the rehearsals, all the other stuff behind the scenes. But Mica's close friends told Fitz News that their marriage did start going downhill about 2 years ago, but most of them did not know how bad stuff had gotten until last fall, 2023. So that's when John Paul read some apology letter to church board members explaining that the couple had separated and admitted that he had been exchanging text messages with the daughter of a couple who were members of the church. Okay, so who is this daughter and how old is this girl? You know, it's probably not his alleged girlfriend because she's older. Some people think she's younger, but she's not, like in her 20s or anything. John Paul also allegedly told the church board that he and Mica had agreed they could, quote, see other people while they were separated, a claim more than a few of the board members questioned. So yeah, any church should question that, because if you're still married, God's law does not say, yeah, it's okay to see other people. It just shows you he was just trying to make up his own rules. But yeah, that was Banfield's show on May 9th, when it was stated that John Paul's ex-wife, Allison, got out just in time because he was starting to treat her, the same way. So I'm glad she got out. They were longtime friends of Mica and John Paul's, and they were church members, but they started feeling icky and uneasy about John Paul's weekly sermons. So not everyone sat under that crap he was spouting in between the infallible word of God, his own stuff. The clips we keep seeing more and more of, that one he looks at the camera and he's like, pretending to cry. Oh my goodness. And the one he tells the story as if he's claiming, it's almost as if he's claiming Mica was running away or messing with some young man who he had paid to put through school and was like a son to him or something. It was some weird. If you watch Christina Randall, she did a great breakdown. I saw it on there. So find Christina Randall's latest video about this. Oh my goodness, it's good. And he's looking at the camera and pretending to cry. But there's another video I saw, because there's so much, a Solid Rock preaching video where John Paul is tells this elaborate story of this man. He tries to keep it anonymous, but he tries to make it obvious that he's talking about himself. And he's saying and this man, his wife, she left him. She drained the bank account. Her husband hired a PI and found out that she was, messing around with this younger guy and all that. And all this time he starts getting so fake emotional so people would realize, oh, he must be talking about Mica. Then he had the nerve to, such a martyrdom, such a martyr, such self-serving. He had the nerve to say, oh, but after all this happened and the man was so angry and he was going to get divorced and all this stuff, you know what? God told the man, forgive your wife. And so John Paul is like, yeah, so he forgave her. If you find that clip, it's crazy. I'm not wanting to put too many Solid Rock clips all up in here. These friends got uncomfortable with that strange new messaging and tone of the weekly sermon, so they found a new church, and that's when Mica started opening up to them. Mica told her friends that John Paul was a sex addict who required her to have sex with him 3 to 5 times a day. Now let me quote Fitz News. Quote, at night, when she refused to comply, they claim he kept her awake by blaring loud music in her ears and throwing water on her as she drifted off to sleep, a form of torture utilized in interrogation techniques. And it describes even more barbaric and demonic behavior. Quote, when Mica couldn't meet his demands, according to her friends, he allegedly began forcing her to take testosterone shots to increase her sex drive. He also allegedly began engaging in other methods of sexual gratification, methods which dehumanized Mica. Several of these methods, which can only be described as humiliating to his reserved wife, allegedly involved animals, homeless men, and sex toys. So Alicia Young is a friend of Mica's, and she's a former church member. She said, and I quote, when we were there, and of course we were in the inner circle and we saw a lot and everything, the way he would talk to her in front of people, he would talk down to her and the light would just go out of her face and everything. And we didn't know exactly how deep the abuse ran because we only saw what was in front of us. That's horrible. That's really bad. And that's when she began carefully documenting evidence for her attorney. Good on you, Mica. Friends say the evidence included proof of misuse of church funds, affairs involving John Paul, and other women, and illicit activities. This is all according to Fitz News. So on February 8th was when Mica was involuntarily admitted to that Waccamaw Center for Mental Health by John Paul. And when she was released on February 10th, 2024, the staff told her, look, your husband's taking your purse and your car keys. I wonder if that's the video where she's banging and busting down the door to get her purse, and he's like, Mica, I don't have, Mica, stop, I don't have your purse.